Welcome to the virtual Malvern Festival of Innovation here in the studio. Really pleased to welcome Beverly Nielsen. She's a councillor at the Malvern Hills District Council, but also has been involved at Birmingham City University in the past. She's been involved in lots of different enterprises and initiatives, and we're going to talk today about some of those and some of the things she's learnt along the way. So thank you, Beverly, for joining us.
Pleasure. Thank you, Adrian.
Obviously, you worked at Birmingham City University in the past, so you were working in a city environment, seeing lots of new enterprises coming through. Tell us a little bit about some of the things you did there and helping some of those small companies.
Yeah, well, one of the big challenges that I think Birmingham and the West Midlands have had over many years, probably as long as I've worked there, is reputation and image. And we all know it to be a really fantastic place that we love and enjoy, with so many talented, bright, inspiring people. But people outside of the area, as long as I've worked in the area, have said, oh, you know, why are you going there? What's so special about it? And so the businesses that I was working with at Birmingham City University said it would be really great to have a design festival. Right. So we started a festival called Birmingham Made Me. Every year we got our students to work with businesses. We set up what I think with hindsight I would call a retail incubator. At the time it was a shop where young students would sort of put their wares. We basically found a shop that was rather like a gallery space, and then each student had their own area. And for me, as somebody involved in design management lecturing, it was fantastic to see them going from having a mood board, you know, with some ideas, to actually bringing those ideas to reality, having to think about sourcing, suppliers, margins, price pointing, customers actually parting with their hard-earned cash to buy these products. And it sort of accelerated the whole process of, could I do this? I'm just doing it, you know, I'm getting on with it and I'm making something of it. And that turned out to be fabulous success. The students really loved it, enjoyed it. Many of them set up their businesses following that. Right. That was 2015. We only did it for a couple of years because the shops were held in the Birmingham mailbox, and the mailbox was refurbishing and renovating and becoming something totally new after that again. So it was a short experiment, but a very successful one. And I think for those students involved, you know, really life-changing for many of them. And we took away the lessons, and of course now the university is doing something very different with a fabulous STEAM House initiative based around innovation and design, and I suppose merging engineering, arts and, you know, the other technical disciplines. So that was one of the really key things. It was tremendously exciting. It was chaired in the first years by Ian Callum, who was the design director at Jaguar, and then later on by Marek Reichman, the design director at Aston Martin. So it sort of brought in the big brands of the region, and it brought to the fore our prowess.
So when you see a company that's, you know, a student that's learning how to grow a company or an idea, and then they actually go ahead and go on and become an entrepreneur, can you think of any examples where that's worked and that's been their career, where they
absolutely. When we set up the, you know, retail incubator, the shop, we needed students to manage it, and so they sort of selected who were going to be the managers of the shop. Everybody had to be there together with another student. Right. We set up a rota, but the managers really were those who were sort of taking it very seriously. And one of them, Angela Berman, she then actually used the model that we created to set up her own business. And she's still basically doing that. So she has a shop. It's various other designers come in, take space in the shop. Her business was making bears, very handcrafted bears, Berman bears. They're still going. She's built that business along with her retail business, and she certainly, whenever I've spoken with her, she has put it down to the experience that she got then. Oh, wow. Alongside those sort of crafted, you know, we were very big in fashion, textiles, those were big areas for the university. But alongside that, there was a very important engineering department. And so we were sort of looking at autonomous vehicles and working with other automotive brands around how could we actually advance automotive autonomous technologies. And so again, working with a company which is still going called Codigital, which I suppose you could refer to as a spin-out, you know, we were able to win their first bid from Innovate UK. That sort of helped put them on the map, and now they're very much into the systems behind autonomous vehicles, and one of the UK's companies in that space. So there were a number of different areas and companies that definitely were their experiences from the university have sort of set them up and moved them on. And I reckon that we helped around 50 businesses or so during that period.
And Birmingham is famous for its jewellery quarter as well, which I know you've got some involvement in. And that's obviously an old industry that is continuing to grow and adapt. What sort of things are happening there? What promise does that hold?
Well, I did quite a bit of research in the jewellery quarter because, again, like so much of our industrial base, it was sort of really a bit overlooked. You know, people knew the jewellery quarter, but the bit they know as the jewellery quarter is very much selling imported products, which are sort of often very affordable. And if you're looking for a beautiful, affordable engagement ring, it's the place to go. So basically, I started to research the quarter, how many real manufacturing businesses were still there, what was the sort of estimated value of their turnover, which we reckon to be just shy of a billion a year, you know, right in the heart of the city. And many of these businesses are old, multi-generation businesses, dependent on craft skills, but increasingly combining those with new, you know, 3D printing, new technologies, which when combined with the craft skills give them very unique offering. So again, having sort of worked with these industries and these businesses and discovered a great deal more about the unique features of the jewellery quarter, I also got to know many of the startups from the School of Jewellery, the Birmingham School of Jewellery. And so again, worked with some of them to try and promote their brands, link them into other existing brands. So for example, Struthers watches, I was able to introduce to Morgan Cars in Malvern, and they did a Morgan Cars watch and they are still working with other automotive brands, I believe, to this day. So a lot of what we were doing was really forming that network, that peer support, the mentoring, the sort of what we'd now call the ecosystem, which I hear referenced a lot, you know, in technology discussions. Perhaps we didn't consciously call it that at the time, but that's what we were doing. We were promoting people every year. Thanks to a donation from another business, we were able to put up posters all across Birmingham and the West Midlands, and we were able to showcase these entrepreneurs, the special projects, and I think generate a great deal of pride in what our students were doing and awareness of the excellence of their work and design.
That's really good. I mean, you mentioned the research you did in Birmingham to find out what was happening on the ground. You've also done the same in Malvern, and I remember you actually went into the field and actually asked companies, you know, about the challenges they were facing. And two things really. One is, why don't we see more of that happening from elsewhere? And also, what did you find? What was surprising in that research?
Well, you know, Malvern is a fantastic source of inspiration on many fronts. And of course, we have this tremendous science heritage from our radar research establishment and you know, then now Kinetic. And that has meant that we have this incredible reputation of having more doctors per square foot or something than Oxford or Cambridge, and you know, an incredible a group of people in the area who really have changed the world as we know it today. And I think that incredible heritage that we sort of are building on is often perhaps overlooked and forgotten about. But in fairness to the councils, Worcestershire and Malvern Hills, I think they were very forward-sighted when they launched the Malvern Hills Science Park and sort of invested in it and got it going. It's been I think it's a tremendous building block on the assets that we have inherited. And so the science park is there. It's still growing. you know, which is tremendous to see. But as you point out, I did actually go in with my pen and paper and knock on doors and go and meet some of these entrepreneurs and ask them, you know, how was it being based in the science park? And of course, you know, I think the feeling was overwhelming that the science park is a wonderful place to be based. But again, this network, this energy level that comes from being networked, meeting other peers, seeing what they're doing, how are they raising money, which is obviously always one of the greatest challenges for any entrepreneur, was something that they flagged up as just not really happening. And I must admit, it's still probably a challenge that we're addressing on the science park. But you know, as a result of that, I've brought together a sort of high growth forum, which I'm delighted you're involved with. And, you know, I think that's a sort of one of the things that's been happening to try and bring together this network, along with another very good initiative from the Worcestershire LEP, Beta Den, which is our accelerator in Malvern Hills. And I think that's also been a really good initiative. But these initiatives are about bringing together often young entrepreneurs who, you know, haven't done it before, haven't got lots of experience, don't know how to get funding, maybe don't even know how to write a business plan or present a business plan fully. So it's about getting the really experienced people we have around with those younger entrepreneurs and helping them to see, look, it is possible, don't give up when, you know, things inevitably turn a bit tough, which, you know, as we all know, it will happen. So.
Yes, and the technology business is hard, of course.
It
is.
is.
If you're going to focus on high tech and having a peer network to help, I think is really important.
I think so too, and you know, just taking confidence from other people who've been through the same challenges and maybe succeeded when you're still struggling, and then kind of you think, well, if they did it, I can do it. So you know, that sort of thing, and just take a bit of hope and inspiration from the network around you.
That's good. And I know the other thing that you've been involved in is some larger infrastructure projects. So like light rail, for example. I mean, there must be completely different challenges in something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked in the West Midlands for, I don't know, over 30 years. And in all of those years, especially working with businesses, infrastructure connectivity has been one of the biggest challenges to competitiveness. And so you cannot sort of be here without realizing that we've got massive congestion, huge car dependency. We've talked for as long as I've worked here about integrated transport planning, which we don't seem to have really got terribly closer to. We've talked about modal shift, you know, especially as we look ahead at our net zero targets and goals. Again, it's something seems to always be just that around the corner, you know, we're never quite getting there. And I think it's, you know, I've read bits of research which have indicated that the West Midlands, because of our car dependency, it affects our productivity levels because they get snarled up in congestion. So, you know, getting to meetings on time, it's not reliable. But economies which are, for example, more train, more tram dependent, have these sort of big increases in productivity, which, you know, these pieces of research indicate. So, you know, looking at places like Lyon, elsewhere in Germany, you know, you see that actually they've invested in tram, train infrastructure more. And so I became quite interested in it. And then I became interested in something called very light rail, and it was sort of a factor of maybe 3 or 4 times lighter than, you know, your traditional heavy rail. So maybe a traditional heavy rail train would be 40 tons for a carriage, and these kind of carriages for very light rail might be 10 or 12 tons. So it's this multiple lighter. And then the challenge was sort of, well, how can you sort of have crash worthiness in a much lighter vehicle? Can it be autonomous? How can you really operate this on a mixed use rail track, you know, so you've got to have heavy rail and light rail. And there's a lot of resistance to those ideas, but we do have one example of very light rail operating in the West Midlands at Stourbridge, where pre-metro operations actually run the Stourbridge shuttle between the Stourbridge Junction station and the bus the bus station, and that has basically over the last 15 years carried over 7 million passengers with a 99.6% reliability track record, which actually lifts the whole of the West Midlands trains reliability track record by a very appreciable percentage. So it's really made its mark, and so they're now looking to expand up to Brierley Hill and Dudley, and so I'm trying to help them and hoping that along the way, you know, we can actually expand the range of vehicles that we're using to cover very light tram and very light trains, maybe using wholly renewable fuels or you know, battery only is obviously something that cars are using, but range remains a challenge, I think, for heavier vehicles with battery only. So it's sort of, you know, can we look at hybrids that are wholly renewable fuels, perhaps combined with a battery, or perhaps even a flywheel, which is what they use at the moment in Stourbridge, a flywheel.
Yes, yeah. So a project like that is huge, and as you've just said, it involves so many different parts in terms of technology and process and compliance and regulation. So, I mean, first of all, what if somebody wants to get involved and help? Because obviously it's also addressing sustainability and climate change, which people are very interested in. What do they do? How do they get involved? How could perhaps they be a supplier to this? And also, how do you navigate all of this stuff? How do you go about that?
It's very challenging, obviously. Rail is traditionally conservative as a sector. And that's down to health and safety, down to regulations which are sort of often dated. Unlike autonomous vehicles, you know, where we have an AV Act from 2024, a lot of the rail regulations are sort of quite old. And also we've now got mixed mode, you know, train tram options, which I know that are used elsewhere. Sheffield, for example, has a train tram. So it's then, you know, how do you which set of regulations are covering these vehicles? Is it rail or is it road? And that in itself causes more challenge, basically. And when you're coming up with a new mode, very light rail as opposed to a metro or a train, then again, what regulatory framework is covering that mode? And again, you know, getting that accepted by all of your bodies, the Department for Transport, you know, etc., is a challenge in itself. But that's sort of what we're working through, and pre-metro operations have been working on for the last 15 years that they've been in business, and there is progress. I mean, obviously these days you've got devolution to the combined authorities, so Transport for West Midlands becomes very important in the context of our area, but obviously you've got transport authorities in the other combined authorities too. So they become very important, and the government's devolved funding to those increasingly. And so we're looking to work with those authorities. Now, if somebody's interested in you know, sort of supporting our efforts, we would welcome that involvement, and please, anybody who wants to get involved, just to contact me, and I think my details are on the internet.
We'll provide some details.
Thank you.
And I mean, you're in a unique position, I think, because you've obviously worked in academia, you're involved in think tanks, you're a counsellor, so you're involved in the political side of it as well.
Yes.
There always seems to be big hurdles to get over with innovation, particularly big innovation.
Yeah.
Again, what's your advice to people just not giving up? How can they get on with this stuff that's so important?
Well, it is daunting, isn't it? It is daunting, and you know, I'm quite amazed a lot of the time when people actually grow in 5 years very considerably. So, I mean, that, you know, full praise to them and well done. But, you know, it doesn't always happen. You know, many businesses that I talk to that I would refer to as startups are actually maybe 10, 12 years old. You know, they've been ploughing on with an idea, developing it, waiting for the market, you know, because the market's not always ready for ideas. And it's a very fine line between ploughing on with something that maybe isn't ever going to be market worthy, or you're just ahead of your time. I mean, you look at massively successful people like Dyson and how long he had to really push to get through and to basically change the way we do so much in our homes. So it is something where I think your belief, your passion is core to it. You do need to just keep going. But part of that keeping going is having the people around you who also believe in what you're doing, who support you, your network of friends, your network of professional colleagues, your advisors, your mentors, and listen to them. Take care of yourself, look after yourself, because you've got to keep going. Yeah. And resilience is such a key factor in all of this. Self-belief, resilience. And understanding your product, understanding your technology in great detail, but understanding your market in a much broader depth is really important. So I think those would be my key tips.
That's good advice. Very good. Well, Beverly, thank you very much. Time has flown, but that was really interesting, and it's really good to cover actually quite a big spectrum of stuff that's going on in the Midlands. So it's great that you've been able to join us, and thank you everybody for watching, and do join us for another episode in the future. Thank you.